The race for governor begins already. I'm Charlie Sykes, and Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, the federal government stayed shut down. Barriers surrounded the World War II Memorial and other national parks. Politicians did, however, move a bit to raise the debt limit, at least temporarily. In Wausau, school officials were forced to reverse their decision to limit the amount of religious music and holiday concerts, a move that led to the shutdown of the school's Master Singer program and the cancellation of holiday concerts at all of the city's elementary schools. The governor announces a $100 million property relief plan, and yes, you will see it in this December's bill. Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen announces that he will step down after 2 terms. Veteran State Senator Bob Jauch is also calling it quits after 31 years in the Capitol. Amazon.com announces plans for a huge new facility in Kenosha and says it will start collecting sales tax in Wisconsin, so congratulations. And in Milwaukee, another co-sleeping death brings the total to 13 dead children this year. But we start with the race for governor. Democrats got their candidate last week with the announcement that Madison millionaire Mary Burke would challenge Scott Walker in 2014. Burke, a member of the Madison School Board, sported a new look in her campaign, kicking off her candidacy this way.
I'm running for governor because we can do better than that, a lot better. But to do it, we've got to make some real changes in Madison. Now, Burke is a former executive at bike manufacturer Trek, which was founded by her dad, and served as Commerce Secretary under former Governor Jim Doyle. Joining me on our panel this morning, blogger Alex Runner, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, political strategist Linda Bruin, and Milwaukee County Supervisor Deanna Alexander. So let's start with you, Michelle. How formidable an opponent is Mary Burke going to make?
Well, I think she's very formidable just from the first standpoint that at least 47 to 48% of the state are going to vote for her just because she's not Scott, because she's not Scott Walker, right? The thing that frustrates me so much with candidates such as Mary Burke is that the Democrats don't seem to care that she's a 1%er, that she outsourced jobs. They don't care what she has done in her life. They just want her to do what they want her to do, and they're going to support her.
Okay, Alex Runner.
Well, the first part of what Michelle said was correct. She is formidable. And, she has what Governor Walker doesn't have, which is real private sector business experience. Governor Walker, as much as he'll tout about eating a brown bag lunch and lowering taxes, he doesn't have that business acumen that Mary Burke has. So I think she's going to be quite formidable. The
business acumen that's expressed in what way? I thought it was interesting that she launched her campaign with a YouTube video instead of like around supporters, and also the new look with it was kind of interesting. But she cited one company that she helped bring to Wisconsin when she was working in Jim Doyle's administration, Uline. And the owner of Uline said last week he never heard of her, didn't know her. She had absolutely nothing to do. So she had nothing more than that?
Well, there's also Trek.
Well, with her daddy's company,
Right. So,
okay, Deanna Alexander.
Let's talk about the rookie mistake she's making right away. Clearly, the Democrats have been looking for and prepping a candidate for a long time now. Is this really the best we can come up with when she's out of the gate and she's already tripping over herself? Furthermore, she hasn't come out in any of her statements so far to say why she is the better candidate. She's saying, oh, I'm Mary Burke, I think I'm a good candidate, but she hasn't explained why she's the better candidate.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the issue with the other company is that was a co-owned company, a husband and wife. The husband's come out and major Walker supporters, both of them, and said he had nothing to do with her, and she responded and said, actually, I dealt with your wife. So I don't know all the ins and outs in that, but I do agree that whoever's running your campaign, that should not have been the example used in their first video. I mean, you want to have a campaign organization behind you that doesn't make those kind of mistakes. I do think it's right that in order for her to win, she's first got to introduce herself, which is what the purpose of the video is. Then she's got to put forward a plan. She's only formidable if she does that well. Ron Johnson wasn't well known. Feingold wasn't well known. You don't need. That's the scary part for Scott Walker.
And you need to have an issue. And I agree with Michelle. I do think you're talking about 47, 48% pretty automatically out of the box. She's going to run on the jobs issue. And, the governor did promise 250,000 jobs. She's going to say, look, we created all these jobs in the private sector. How do the Republicans counter that?
Oh, I think they can. Well, I think the additional dollars coming into the state right now is proving that the state's moving in the right direction. So I think the governor's going to be able to carry its own weight on that. But at the same time, she just As a candidate, she has not been vetted very sufficiently, I don't think. Just the fact that she has had people around the country actually come to her defense with those pictures that you showed beforehand, actually, and that she's, you know, she somehow feels that she was attacked because she had a before and after picture posted out there. I think it's...
Well, it's the extreme makeover. And the fact is that she has to be made over into a mainstream candidate. Now, look, Tammy Baldwin was elected United States Senator, you know, a very liberal Madison woman last year, so, you know, it's certainly possible to do it. But the Ron Johnson example is maybe the exception to the rule that you can run with no political experience whatsoever.
And but Ron Johnson ran for a reason. Ron Johnson had a story. He had things that he wanted to do, and he started talking about that right out of the box.
Mary Burke
did not do
that.
Yeah,
she has a reason to.
Mary Burke definitely has a reason. She feels like our state is really divided. She feels like the business, private sector gains haven't been big enough. And I think, you know, look, she's not going to be polished. She's not going to be a slick politician. She's going to have some stumbles, but I think she's authentic.
The bottom line are the independents in this election, just like they are in all in Wisconsin in a gubernatorial election. It's and whether they're going to, those independents are going to go away from Walker because they've had him long enough that now they have some things they don't like. The northern counties don't like what he's doing with the school voucher program. The southern counties are upset about the casino. But if that's the real question is that enough to make those independents who voted for Walker in the past flip over to a Democrat?
Let's not forget Act 10, right? Because she is going to have to say one way or another if she agrees with it or not, and that's where some of the independent voters are going to be.
Well, I also think it's interesting. I mean, on paper, I understand why the Democrats picked her. I mean, she's got a lot of money. She's a woman, you know, and she's got the private sector experience.
Business experience.
On paper, it looks good, you know. But again, you know, here is the problem. Is she going to be able to relate to the Democratic base? You know, is she going to be ready for prime time when she has to answer some of those tough questions? And I have to admit, I guess I'm a little bit puzzled why anybody thinks that Jim Doyle's job czar is going to be the answer to the jobs problem. Because what is she going to say? Hey, remember what a great job we did under Jim Doyle? Maybe we should go back to the Jim Doyle policies? Is she going to endorse all of the Jim Doyle business policies, the tax increases under Jim Doyle?
Let's see how long it takes.
Trust me, the Republicans are going to remind people that she worked for, did I mention, Jim Doyle? What has your glass half full and what has your glass half empty this week? Let's go around the table. Alex Runner.
Well, my glass is half full because St. Marcus Lutheran School, which Henry Tyson runs, is just an excellent school. I'm not a big school choice guy. I feel like they don't have enough accountability oftentimes, but St. Marcus is the exception to the rule. It's half empty because there are a lot of people who will oppose a school just because it's a choice school. I say give St. Marcus a chance.
Michelle.
My glass is half full because Congressman Paul Ryan has come up with a great idea to start curbing some entitlements and spending for our federal government. But my glass is half empty because the president said he's willing to talk about it, but he wants a balanced approach, which means you know he's talking about tax increases.
Linda Brun.
Well, the Obamacare glass is half full because the millions of uninsured and underinsured people attempting to sign up for the program proved to the naysayers that the benefits of the program are needed. But the Obamacare glass is half empty because, as we all know, the massive startup problems of the administration has prevented most of those people from signing up and makes people very suspicious about the ability of that program to actually work.
Deanna Alexander.
Flipping that around a little bit, the glass is half empty for me because our park systems nationwide have been shut down. But that glass is half full because our veterans who went to the War Memorial pushed through the barriers and made their way in.
Well, it's interesting that Alex Runner and I are kind of on the same page here because my glass is half full because we do have great schools in this city like St. Marcus. It's half empty because MPS is refusing to sell them unused empty buildings. See, for MPS, it's not about the kids, it's about market share, and that's why they're still standing in the schoolhouse door. Next on Sunday Insight, have you signed up for Obamacare yet? That's a trick question. Well, how bad was the rollout of the new Obamacare exchanges? This bad. A week after the exchanges went online, the city of Milwaukee's health department said that not a single Milwaukeean had been able to register for insurance. Not one. Bupkis. Other states also reported signups in the single digits. What went wrong? Almost everything. The computer system reportedly cost taxpayers $634 million, but what we got was what one magazine called the digital equivalent of a rock. if it wasn't for the political follies in Washington, this would be the biggest story of the week. So I'm interested, Lynn, how are you going to put spin on this pig? I mean,
you can't. There's no way to spin absolute ineptitude. They should have learned from past examples when government has tried to roll out big programs where there were glitches in the past, and they should have learned from that. They've had 3 years to try and put this together, and they haven't. And the bottom line is, I do give credit to the Milwaukee Health Department, to Anthem Blue Cross, and some of our other area insurers who have actually taken the step of keeping lists of all the individuals that tried to call so they can contact them back. And that's a pretty pathetic start to the program.
But if they can't get this right, why should we think that the federal government is going to get anything involving health care right, Deanna Alexander?
Well, I think we saw this coming, that there would at least be glitches for a while, but just a few weeks ago, the Milwaukee County Board authorized an extra $750,000, nearly $1 million of taxpayer money to be taken out of rainy day funds to deal with this emergency of the plethora of people that were going to be beating down the courthouse doors to say, sign me up, I don't know what to do, and there's not the outrage we thought there would be.
So now, Alex Runner, you've worked in the private sector and the public sector. If I gave you $600 million and said, hey, how about coming up with a website that sells stuff? Do you think maybe you'd be able to pull this off? Yeah. If I gave you $600 million in 2 years? So why can't the federal government do it?
You know, that's a good question. I don't have the answer to that, but I don't think we can talk about the Affordable Health Care Act without talking about the government shutdown, which you mentioned was the big story this week. And, you know, the Republicans in Congress, they have all-time lows for their polling. The outrage that throughout the country really isn't against Obamacare or Affordable Health Care Act. The outrage really is about the government shutdown.
So, in other words, the response to the FUBARs of Obamacare is, I hope you all notice this, changing the subject.
Right.
You got nothing.
I have to answer.
I think what he's trying to do is to say, bottom line, government has been screwing up so badly on so many different levels that the public is actually not becoming enraged more. They're so used to these follow-ups, whether it's from the Republicans or the Democrats or whomever, and I think that's actually impacting this.
You know where it was working? 95% of Wisconsinites were covered by some sort of health insurance, either Badger Care, Medicare, or private insurance in our state. Wisconsin did not need Obamacare. They did not need the overhaul, but our federal government still decided to come in and implement this year. So obviously one of the reasons we don't see people signing up in Wisconsin is because most people in Wisconsin actually are covered.
Well, that's actually, that's actually true. No, well, it is true that most people have insurance through their employer or through other means, but this is a certain population for the most part, underemployed, unemployed, self-employed, who need this. And I don't think it's a big surprise. It's only been out 1 week.
It's close to 2 weeks.
If it's not fixed, if it's not fixed within several months' time, then there's a huge problem here.
Just remember the next time that you guys think, hey, wouldn't it be great if government did this rather than the private sector? Would you remember this? Just remember this? Now, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Alex Runner, you're first.
My unsolicited advice is for really everyone out there to support, if you've heard about it, if you haven't heard about it, Walnut Way Conservation Corps is an incredible organization in the Central City off North and 17th. They had a horrible fire, electrical fire. Really, this organization, Republicans, Democrats, everyone supports it. They really could use a handout. A hand up, not a handout.
Yeah, Michelle.
All right, so Republicans, you lost the battle in D.C. Take it with stride. You lost this battle, but we need to win the war. So my advice to you is to actually really take advantage of this opportunity to reform the entitlements and spending.
Okay, Linda Bruin.
Well, I can't even sneak a bottle of water onto a plane, but recently a 9-year-old boy was able to sneak onto a Delta flight in Minneapolis. So my advice to the TSA is that they better figure out right now how a child got past security protocols, because the next person who gets past their protocols might be a lot more dangerous than a troubled child.
Deanna Alexander.
My advice is for Andrea Mitchell, who earlier this week interviewed Congressman Duffy and falsely accused him of having the same Cadillac health plan as our President, Commander-in-Chief. And so my advice, Andrea, do your homework.
Okay, my unsolicited advice is to the President of the United States. Mr. President, you're a very busy man. You got wars in the Middle East, you have nuclear crises, government shutdowns, debt ceilings. So maybe you ought not to stick your nose into issues like NFL team nicknames. Just saying. Next on Sunday Insight, how does $100 million in property tax relief sound to you? It could be here for your next tax bill. Governor Scott Walker and legislative leaders announced a special session that will include a plan to give homeowners $100 million in property tax relief. New state revenue calculations show a surplus. Walker wants to pass that on to property taxpayers through an increase in school aids. The tax cut could save the typical Wisconsin homeowner $680 over 4 years and $3,500 over 10 years compared to previous projections. The bill is scheduled to pass through both houses this week and could be on the governor's desk next week. That would mean the relief would show up in the December property tax bill. Good idea?
I think so. You know, the taxpayers are getting tired of being nickeled and dimed and constantly paying. And, you know, now the taxpayers have a chance to get something back finally. And if we were to wait too long before actually designating this to certainly go back, they wouldn't get it. The government would spend it.
I'm guessing that Democrats will vote against this?
Well, I don't really understand it. So we have
property tax relief. You don't get that.
No, what I don't understand is we have an extra $100 million in the state budget somehow. And this is going to relieve taxes one place, but obviously you're going to get that from taxes somewhere else.
Right.
So, you know, some people say robbing Peter to pay Paul, but what I think would make the most sense is keep the local control, let schools be controlled by the locals. That's a conservative value. But, you know, create some other mechanism so there's not so much burden on the property tax. In Milwaukee, we have high property taxes, but we have no other revenue stream. So we have no sales tax or nothing else really in the city of Milwaukee, or for MPS. I think a sales tax, like a 1-cent sales tax for education, would make more sense than taking this extra money from the state.
So your reaction to property tax relief is that we actually need higher taxes on the city of Milwaukee?
I think we should lower property taxes for sure. But I don't think taking it from the state's been strapped.
But the money's coming in actually because the economy is doing better in the state, right? So we have increased income taxes coming into the state, and we have increased sales tax. So we have this additional money. So before the elected officials can spend it and come up with a new spending program, they're giving it back, which is the complete opposite of what happened over the last 8 years in the state.
I don't have a problem with him wanting to give the money back. I think it's a smart move. Doyle did it when he was running for election in 2006. Governors all over the country do this when they have excess money. I think that's not a problem. I think the only legitimate question I have is that since the proposal's coming so quickly, questions like there's a projected, by the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, they're projecting a $545 million deficit for the 2015 to 17 budget. So my question would be, if you remove this $100 million from the pool to pay for that deficit, how does that shake out? Those are the type of questions that I think are legitimate to ask in any tax proposal.
I think the key to this is that Wisconsin has always, followed you spend the money as soon as it comes in the door. You get an extra $1 in revenue, you get an extra $1 in spending. For the first time now, what we're seeing is a political will to give it back to the public. Is what they said this week the same thing as what you heard? Let's go around the table. We'll start with you, Alex.
Well, what Paul Ryan said, which Michelle mentioned earlier, what Paul Ryan said is that we can work out a budget deal with the federal government that deals with entitlements but doesn't touch Obamacare. What I heard is Obamacare is a done deal.
Michelle Litchens.
Well, what we've all heard the president say time and time again is that he could make special exemptions for businesses and other fronts under Obamacare. But what we heard this week was that he couldn't make that special exemption on his own for our veterans.
Linda Bruin.
Well, when some Republican congressmen said that it wouldn't be the end of the world if Congress failed to raise the debt ceiling before the deadline passed, what I heard them say was they don't care if our economy tanks, and they don't care if foreign creditors are paid before Americans get their Social Security or Medicare benefits.
Deanna Alexander.
We are all watching the federal government this week. I heard the president say there's no negotiating on the Obamacare timeline. I'm sorry, that's what he did say. And what I heard him say is that he cares more about foreign countries' leaders and big businesses than listening to the American public.
Well, I heard the same thing. The president said, I will absolutely, positively never, ever, ever negotiate with those Republicans. What I heard was, let's talk. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Alex Runner, you're first.
My winners are Mayor Barrett and the Milwaukee Common Council for showing Madison and Washington how to govern and debate a budget with professionalism and civility. My losers are Republicans in Congress whose public approval ratings are lowest they've been in decades. The party is in hot water.
Michelle Litchens.
There are too many losers to choose from, so I have two winners. When Americans see a problem, we fix it, like the Fisher House. When they saw families who had just lost a soldier and they were not receiving their death benefits, the Fisher House stepped in and covered the government's payments. And Chris Cox, who was out in D.C. for an art convention and saw that the trash needed to be picked up and the lawns needed to be mowed around the mall and the Lincoln Memorial. Chris has inspired many others to step up and do the same. So unlike our president, thank you, and you make America proud.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my winners are Fisher House and the Obama administration, who worked together to fund death benefits for military families whose loved ones died in service to our country. My losers are the House Republicans, who were warned ahead of time by the Defense Department that military families would lose those benefits if Congress shut down government without making special provisions for those families. The Republicans chose not to, and then only voted to reinstate the benefits once the public found out what was going on.
Deanna Alexander.
This week's losers are the families of all those who paid the ultimate price for the country, for our country. They were denied those death benefits. Great minds think alike, since we've all recognized them. Due to that government shutdown with the Pentagon's program for hope and change. But this week's winner, it's the Fisher Foundation, a nonprofit veterans group that heroically stepped in to work with congressmen on both sides of the aisle to pick up that slack.
Okay, well, there's a pattern here. My winner, the Fisher House, which stepped up when the Obama administration decided that it wasn't going to pay death benefits to the families of soldiers who were killed in action. By the way, that was their decision. The Fisher House said they would pick up the tab, classy stand-up guys in an age of political pettiness and dysfunction. Losers, Washington politicians. Do I need to explain why? I didn't think so. Thanks for joining me and joining for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.